shouldn't run the show. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover shouldn't run the show. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover shouldn't run the show. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover shouldn't run the show. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover shouldn't run the show. Hey, hey. We're out here today in front of the offices of Grover Norquist, who has done more than any other private citizen to impoverish our nation and poison our society through a very strict ideology that most Americans don't agree with. And today is a day that the patriotic Americans are paying their taxes, and we want to be here to let everyone know that paying taxes is patriotic, and that Grover Norquist and his pledge that he's extracted from the path of Congress is not. But we also know at the same time that there are grave defects, or maybe I should say grove defects, in our tax system. We ask too little contribution of those who have the most to give, while at the same time demanding too much sacrifice from those who have the least to spare. And that's not good, right?
Right.
You're getting the hang of it. We value wealth over work. We tax money made by the muscle, sweat, and thought of human beings at up to twice the rate of what we charge tax on piles of cash that generate income and may have been collected years, decades, or even a century ago. And that's no good either, is it? We allow multinational corporations that are very profitable to get away without paying a dime to the society that makes their success possible. I don't think you approve of that, do you?
No!
And while we tax the essentials that middle-class families need, we allow Wall Street gambling to go on without paying any tax, and that's the kind of economic activity that got us into the Great Recession, and that's no good at all. We know we are better than this.
Yeah!
So what's the problem? Well, believe it or not, a big part of the problem is right behind me right now. In this office building, or the one just over there. And the problem is named Grover Norquist. So you've heard of it. So who's Grover Norquist? Well, he's someone who has spent his entire professional life ensuring that the 1% are never asked to contribute their fair share to our society. That's no good, right? He believes that we're all better off struggling on our own, that we have nothing to offer each other. That's not right. We have nothing to share with one another. That's not right. And that we can't work together to create a better world. And I'm sure you don't agree with that idea. No! Grover Norquist has bullied half of our Congress, has bullied them into signing a pledge that makes legislating impossible, that threatens our security, that contradicts the solemn oath taken by each member upon taking office in Congress. And I don't think any of you approve of that, do you?
No!
And in fact, just last night he was at work again. He blocked a bill in the Senate that would have ensured that billionaires paid at least as high a tax rate as middle-class families. Even though he got a majority of senators voting for it, he was able to block it using the arcane rules of the Senate, and I think we're all unhappy about that.
Yes.
Grover Norquist has done all these things for a quarter of a century, largely in the shadows. But today, we're all out here on Patriotic Tax Day to say, Grover, it's over! Grover, it's over! Grover, it's over! Grover, it's over! Grover, it's over!
Listen, some of you have probably heard the slang from Grover Norquist that he believes we should shrink government to the size that you can drown it in a bathtub. But I'm here to tell you, we kind of misunderstand Grover when he says that. You see, as Will says, I grew up in the 1%. I grew up in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. I went to high school with Mitt Romney. I grew up in a town of people from the 1%. So did Grover Norquist. He grew up in Weston, Massachusetts, the most affluent town in Massachusetts. Listen, where I grew up, the houses are big, the pools are big, the rooms are big. The bathtubs are big. So all I'm saying is when he says drop it in the bathtub, you don't have to worry. The tub is much bigger than you can imagine. All right, listen, the reason we're here is everybody else. There's something wrong with that. And what Grover has done is help make sure that that tax system for the privileged stays intact, and every year lobbies to make it more and more unfair. As Will said, yesterday the Senate voted to thwart the will of the majority and shut off debate on the Buffett rule. A very simple proposal. People who earn over $1 million should pay at least 30% of their income in taxes.
At least.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
70% of the U.S. public supports that.
Yeah.
The majority in the Senate supports it.
Yeah.
And yet, we will not have that rule become the law of the land. Because of the organizing efforts of people like Grover Norquist.
And she knows what it's like to work hard for a living and to save lives and to pay less tax, half the tax of a Wall Street trader. She also knows what inadequate public resources caused by inadequate taxation does to social services like healthcare. So she's got two perspectives on this that are both very important. And she also is part of a great organization called National Nurses United. They've made it their cause to tax Wall Street gambling, basically. A tiny little tax, no one noticed. No one has a 401k, has their own stock account, would ever notice this. But if you're up there in Wall Street just churning stocks all day long, you can raise a lot of money that way and help out Main Street. So let's bring on right here to our stage, which is really just a milk carton, Brenda King, neonatal intensive care nurse at Children's Hospital. Come on up, Brenda.
My name is Brenda King, and I've been a nurse for 40 years. It can be hard to understand why we pay more taxes than the rich. Until we look at how we make our money and how the wealthy make theirs. As a nurse, I work long hours, 12-hour shifts. But I'm not complaining because I chose this profession and I take seriously my commitment to be the best patient advocate that I can possibly be.
My grandparents were school teachers. My father was a very successful entrepreneur. And I am incredibly grateful to all of them for the hard work that enabled me to live a life that my great-grandparents could only dream of. And I am also incredibly grateful to the country that enabled that dream to come true. But I fear that for too many of our fellow citizens, the American dream is becoming a pipe dream. My father was very smart and he worked very hard. But he'd be the first to tell you that his success depended as much on the country in which he worked as on his own efforts. It is impossible to create wealth without a good system of public schools to provide an educated workforce. Without soldiers, policemen, and firemen to provide security. Without a transportation infrastructure to provide access to a national market of customers. The list goes on and on. But all these things are at risk today because too many people no longer recognize that private wealth creation requires public investment. They are at risk today because too many politicians have signed a pledge that is starving our government of the money it needs to invest in our citizens and our future. I am among the most fortunate Americans. Unlike the average member of the middle class, my income has grown dramatically over the last 30 years. And yet, over that same period, Congress has repeatedly lowered my taxes. Because my income comes primarily from investments, I always pay at a much lower rate that middle-class Americans whose income comes from good, old-fashioned, hard work. In 2010, I had adjusted gross income of over $700,000, but paid only 16% in federal income taxes. And Grover Norquist thinks my taxes should be even lower. His taxpayer protection pledge opposes any and all efforts to increase tax rates or even to close any tax loopholes. Think about what this means. Grover thinks that tax breaks for millionaires are more important than helping middle-class kids go to college. Grover thinks that tax breaks for millionaires are more important than fixing America's crumbling infrastructure. Grover thinks that tax breaks for millionaires are more important than health care for the sick, the disabled, the elderly. Grover even thinks that tax breaks for millionaires are more important than narrowing the budget deficits that will have to be repaid by our children and grandchildren. Grover, we think you are wrong, wrong, wrong. We think that giving every citizen a fair shot at the American dream is more important than tax breaks for millionaires. We think that public investments in education and in infrastructure are more important than tax breaks for millionaires. And we think that wealthy Americans like me should pay higher tax rates than middle-class Americans, not lower rates. We reject Grover's pledge because we want to live in a society that offers opportunity to all Americans, not just to a privileged few. We reject Grover's pledge because we think that politicians should only be pledging to do what's best for America. We reject Grover's pledge and embrace another pledge offering liberty and justice for all.
Here's my closing joke. The CEO of ExxonMobil and Grover Norquist and Joe the plumber and a teacher are sitting down, and there's 12 fresh-baked cookies on the table. And the CEO of ExxonMobil eats 11 of them. And Grover turns to Joe the plumber and says, "Look out for that teacher. She wants your cookie." Don't let Grover Norquist divide and conquer us. We are not broke. I want to hear you chant with me. We are not broke. We are not broke. We are not broke. Let me tell you where some money will come from. We can reverse the Bush tax cuts. $1 trillion over the next 10 years. We can close the offshore tax haven system. $1 trillion over the next 10 years. We can tax capital gains and wealth at the same rate as work. It's another $100 billion a year. We are not broke. We are not broke. We are not broke. We are not broke.
And thank you very much for coming out. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover's pledge has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover's pledge has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Grover's pledge has got to go.